Hello there, and welcome to our live. Apologies for the slight delay. I was just having a nice Sunday breakfast or brunch of French toast, which is kind of just a nice surprise. So right now I'm looking out in front of me, and there is the beautiful ocean, the sky, so blue. There's a lot of beautiful jungle in front of me, and it's really sunny. So where I am in Costa Rica is the rainy season. And sometimes the mornings start out a little gray. So today it is bright and very light out. So I'm really happy to be here with you and just share a little bit about scars on your knee. So, knee scars, there's a lot of them. So I'm going to try to touch on as many different versions of knee scars as we have. And knees are probably one of the more complicated areas. It's a lot more complicated than talking about an abdominal scar, for example. Not to say that a knee scar causes more pain or more challenge in the body, the energy, or the emotions, but the way that we want to look at the scar is significantly more challenging. So I'm going to try to highlight as much as I can. And also, if you are in front of a computer, if you're in front of a laptop or, your desktop or whatever, and you can do some Google searching with me, it's going to really help you narrow down all of what I'm going to share with you and make it personal to you. Because we can talk about ACL surgeries, ACL reconstructions. They have a certain type of scar. And actually, just on the whole, knee scars have changed so much over the decades. They have at one point been quite gnarly and huge scars. And now, as much as they can, they're narrowing that down and making them more like smaller ports. Usually there's at least two, sometimes three, depending on what's going on. So there's a whole range of scars and what it could look like. But we're going to talk about ACL reconstructions, ACL surgeries, as well as another common one, which is any type of meniscus-like surgery, all the healing in that area, MCL kind of world. We're going to talk about just straight up like trauma to the knee. If you've had an accident, it's very common to injure your knee in stuff like skiing or any kind of winter sport because you're going fast. I know some people have been in trauma like accidents, car accidents, stuff like this for their knees. Thinking about that, I'm going to touch on that and share some info about that. Someone else has asked me specifically about patellar reattachments. So they've had some sort of knee problem. It has to be like usually an acute trauma. And the quad, it goes quadricep muscle, so like front thigh muscle, into a tendon, then your patella, which is your kneecap, that attaches onto your tibia. So there's a whole type of injury that may happen where that kind of flies off if there's been usually a blunt force trauma in the patella and the quad, like fling away from the actual knee joint. That's a big problem. There's other things like dislocations, obviously. Sometimes those create scars, sometimes they don't, because sometimes they can go in just with manual movement. So a dislocation, just super simply, while we're on the topic, the difference between a subluxation and a dislocation is important to know. A subluxation is when it goes in, out. So usually this is pretty common in sport. It's also common in like accidents, car accidents, where like a joint will go in, out, particularly the knee or the shoulder, and it subluxes and then kind of comes in on its own or with someone who's there very quickly to bring it back into place. There's different types of techniques where you can pull the joint back into alignment. A dislocation, however, is when it comes out and stays out, and it's very painful, especially in the knee, especially in the shoulder, because so many muscles start to guard and grip. And oftentimes, if it doesn't get the opportunity to go back in, it will usually have to get relocated by going under anesthesia so that the doctors can just pull it back into its correct alignment. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to also talk about really common, just slow, progressive, chronic degeneration of the knee joint that ends up being a knee reconstruction. Knee reconstructions have changed again over like the decades. So think about your own reconstruction, or if you have someone in mind that you're thinking about, think about what they have, because it's always changing. Sometimes people still have their actual kneecap, sometimes they don't. For example, there's so many different types of surgeries. The knee is really complicated, and I'm going to try to make it really simple. And actually, I'm going to share something with you about the knee that a lot of people don't really know. So if you have something going on with your knee, like if you've had a surgery, or you have a lot of knee pain and you're worried about a surgery, or you have scarring on your knee, I'm going to share something with you that is going to be very helpful, because I'll save it for just a moment. I'll save all the goods. Okay, so what are we going to talk about? I'm going to briefly talk about this thing that you don't know or potentially don't know about knees, which is very exciting to give you correct, accurate information. So I'm going to share that in a moment. But in all of these videos, what we do is we share these 3 different ways or 3 different sections in the video. We're going to talk about all the things that you may be experiencing physically in your body because of this scarring. Right now, we don't know that scars are creating a lot of havoc in our body. We don't know that they're creating a lot of havoc in our mind, in our energy, in our emotions. So we use these videos to bring all that into alignment so we can see all of these things that maybe we're really struggling with, or we don't know where they're coming from. We start to understand that they're all being caused by the scarring. So we do physical considerations first. It's grounding to talk about. It's kind of easy because you can just look down and see your knee. Usually we're much more connected with our physical body, especially if you do like movement practices. If you move your body on a somewhat regular basis, you feel much more connected to your physical body. After that, we go into the after that, we go into the energy and the emotion. So what could be going on for you energetically, meaning, how's your energy, quite literally. I don't necessarily mean it in like a woo-woo-y way, like how's your spiritual energy necessarily. I'm talking about what's your energy like. Lots of people have poor sleep. Lots of people suffer from anxiety. Lots of people are going through mood disorders, hyperreactivity, poor relationship dynamics, energy dips and drains throughout the day. This is what I'm talking about, as well as I lump these things together, the energy and the emotion, because they go kind of together. Because when you think about your energy, when you think about your emotion, when you think about your mind and your thoughts, all of this should ideally, in like a really well-functioning human being, just be kind of like a coming in and a coming out. A thought is coming in and it's coming out. An emotion can come in and then it should leave. The problem is that we hold on to things, and that creates a ton of tension. It depletes us to hold on to all these things. And these things get particularly like bound up and knotted inside the scar itself. Particularly if these things that you're feeling about yourself, you're feeling about the situation surrounding the knee, it will all be like stuck in the scar. So scar work, as I describe it, is really impactful because it gives you access to that emotion, to that energy. Nothing else, as far as I know, can get that directly into all of that stuff. So we are more commonly used to addressing it with like talk therapy, or any other types of psychotherapy, or guided meditations, or inner child work, or other type of stuff. There's so much out there now, but we may feel like we get to some of it, but it's not fully resolved. And maybe you feel like it is fully resolved, but when you start working the scar in the way that I work in my system, Scars Reigniting Your Feminine, you may very likely come back into contact with stuff that's unresolved. Why is it unresolved? Because you never worked the scar, because it's quite literally stuck inside the scar. So this is really important for us to talk about. Again, the knee is kind of complex. There's a lot of stuff passing through the knee. The knee is a really kind of weird, crappy joint as far as like its congruency and what holds it together. So we're going to talk about that and try to make sense of that and hopefully relate it to yourself. And then at the very end, we're going to do what to do with these scars preliminarily, particularly to the knee. So I always give a practice that you should be doing with every single scar on your body, and you can't skip over that one. And then I'm going to give you something to do with your knee in particular. All right. Whew. I feel like I'm talking like extra fast, or maybe it's just Sunday and I'm extra slow. Okay, biomechanics. This is the stuff that you probably don't know about. If you have ever looked into getting knee rehab, going to a therapist of some sort, it doesn't matter what type of therapist, a chiropractor, an osteopath, physical therapist, whoever kind of therapist, and you felt like your knee just didn't really get better, or maybe even over time it got worse. Generally, people's knees, they like degrade over time. We have this idea that like, I have bad knees in my family, so I'm going to get a knee replacement, or I have bad knees, I'm just waiting or buying my time until I get a knee replacement. This is a really bad way to think, and this is actually completely untrue. One of the big problems that was going on right now is the knee biomechanics that I myself as a therapist was taught, many other different therapists. I don't want to speak for them all because I'm not too sure who learned what, because that's too big of a generalization. But many of us learned biomechanics of the knee backwards. I did too. The only person or the only company that I know to date that has the correct biomechanics of the knee, and they're making huge changes and they're going to slowly start rewriting the textbooks if they ever get around to it, is this company. They're from the UK. I've taken their course 8 times. Their company is called Anatomy in Motion. Okay, it's mainly for like people like myself to learn the proper biomechanics of the whole body, but they have a lot of cool stuff online now that is helpful for you, like at home doing like stuff online. Everyone jumped on the pandemic train, and I'm sure there's a lot of things you can learn about online. Now, if you don't want to learn online, but you just want to know what it is I'm talking about, like why did they get it wrong? Like how did this happen? How did like everyone get knee mechanics wrong and these people got it right? Well, the answer is really simple. So when we started learning about biomechanics and like how the joints move, we did not at the beginning, except for like more recently, we did not get any of this information from living, walking, upright human beings. We got a lot of our information from cadavers, dead people, dead bodies on tables, out of gravity, without a nervous system, without proper mechanics, because they would just move a joint in and out on a lifeless body, on a limp body. This gave, for the most part, a lot of the correct mechanics. But for the knee, it's actually the opposite way that we all think. So when you had gotten knee rehab potentially in the past, they were giving you the opposite, like how to make, essentially, I don't want to say this as a generalization, but it's kind of true. They were rehabbing your knee in the wrong way. They were doing the wrong proper mechanics. So every single joint has a direction of slide and glide that it does naturally if there's no problem. So the knee, I'll tell you the coupling that it should be doing. And this is the opposite of any textbook that you open or any Googling that you do, except for with anatomy motion. So when the knee is bending, when the knee is closing in its joint, when the knee is flexing, yeah? I would show you my leg, but I don't know if that's going to be super useful. When the knee is bending, what also is happening is the lower leg, the tibia, is externally rotating. Meaning if you were to watch your knee right now, I'm just looking down at my leg, and you straighten it completely, and then you start to bend it, the tibia should move to the outside. Not a lot, like don't go crazy, but just naturally the biomechanics, the tibia will rotate outwards, rotate externally. And then when you start to straighten your leg again, the opposite happens. When you extend your knee, the tibia internally rotates naturally. This is what should be happening naturally. If you have a knee problem, for any of the stuff I said at the beginning, that may not be happening. It may also not be happening because we have this really weird culture right now with knees, and there's so much stuff. How to squat properly, how to rehab a knee properly, how to do this post-surgery, It's a lot of stuff. A lot of it's incorrect. So what do we do with that information? I'm going to give you a really simple what to do at the end of this class that will give you proper knee mechanics. Just getting your knee to start moving in the correct way again can be an absolute game changer. It will stop, potentially, a lot of the progression that may be going on with your knee if it feels like it's getting worse or it's not getting better. So I hope that is mind-blowing to you, because it was really mind-blowing when I learned it. All right, so let's get into the physical considerations of the knee scars. Like I said, there's so many different knee scars. The knee is also really complicated because it is quite literally just like a lower leg on top of a that's a femur, like a thigh bone. So it's a tibia and a femur that like rest kind of like this. If I could like get them stacking perfectly, then I would. I feel like that's a pretty good job. Now, what it does is it's kind of like a glorified hinge joint, except for it does a little bit of a rotation. So if you've ever like looked at your own knee, like done some Googling, you may have heard of the mechanism, the screw home mechanism. The screw home is literally just like talking about that little rotation that I just did with my hand. And it's also just talking about that rotation that I just described as proper mechanics in the knee. That needs to happen. Knees are supposed to rotate. The knee is almost identical to the elbow. The elbow straightens, it bends. It also does a little bit of rotation. So you can put your palm up, you can put your palm down. That's a rotative movement, and it does that. So it's a glorified door hinge, all right? So glorified hinge is what I want you to think about as your knee mechanic, but then there's so many different muscles like crossing. And this is where it can get a little bit complicated with your scar and what you're experiencing. So in general, how I like to explain the legs is I want you to imagine that each leg is like a pillar. So you have one leg, your right leg is a pillar, then you have your second pillar, which is your left leg, and it's holding your house up, okay? It's holding your pelvis and like your torso up, making your house stable and solid. So in that way, I want you to think a pillar has all sides. It has 2, 4 different sides. And this is how I want you to think about your leg in relation to your scars. I know, Simone, I get really excited about this stuff. It's kind of embarrassing. So yeah, this is really important to think about because where your scar is going to be impacting whatever's underneath it, but also all of the sides of the house. So if you have, well, sorry, I said house, but I also mean pillar. I explain it in like 4 sides of a house or 4 sides of a pillar, whatever you want to say. So where you have a scarring, where you have scar, you have all the other walls of your house or of your pillar are going to be challenged in some way. So you want to think about where your scarring is. Most people have scarring on the front of their knee, but sometimes people only have scarring on the inside or the outside. It's very rare that they have it in the back of the knee because it's a very dangerous place to start putting scar tissue because it's a very open spot. Maybe I'll touch on that in a moment. So 4 sides of the house, there's the front quads. So we talked about that at the very beginning with the patellar reattachment. Quads, kneecap, going down into your like shin and tibia. Then you have the outside of your house of one of your pillars, which is mostly your IT band, but you can also think of it as the outside quad and the outside hamstring. It goes down into the lower outside leg, which has a bunch of other muscles called your peroneals. Then you go to the exact opposite, you go to the inside of your leg. That's a bunch of groin muscles. There's 5 adductor muscles that all function as kind of like a unit, but they each have their individual thing that they do. So all the way up into your groin, like your pubic bone, but like more kind of like in towards the inner part of your groin, stretching all the all the inside of the leg, down the thigh, passing the knee joint, and then it's going to go to the lower leg on the inside. Then you have the back pillar. You have the back of your house, which is pretty much just your hamstrings going through behind the knee to the calf. Now, the behind the knee, as I just mentioned, is a vulnerable spot. So there's very common to have cysts back there. There's poor joint movement. You can get this little like bloop of part of your joint capsule like pop out the back. That's really common. And all I want you to remember at the back of the knee is it's really exposed. So you have like hamstrings on either side, then you have calf muscles coming up on the either side, but the inside part of your knee at the center is pretty open and exposed, and you have a huge nerve there, you have a huge artery, and you have a huge lymphatic vessel. So all of these guys dance together in that spot, and then they start to supply the lower leg. So you want to make sure that that area is moving well. It's very common that people feel like pressure in their knee, and that can start to put pressure and impede on those structures. And then we have fluid problems, we have like nerve problems, we can't move our foot very well, we get shin splints, we have poor circulation, we got all of these different things going on, okay? So I want you to think about your house or your pillar and where you have the scarring and which sides of your pillar do you actually experience pain or discomfort in. Is it the front, the outside, the inside, or the back? Okay, so think about that as it relates to you, because when we get into the emotional and the energetic considerations, each side of this house, of the pillar, is actually related to a different energetic channel. So we'll just like tack on to that in a moment. So fluids. I'm always talking about fluid systems. You'll hear me so often talking about the importance of having fluid systems that are moving well. If your knee is not articulating well, if it's not sliding and gliding in the way that it needs to, all of a sudden your fluids are not getting down into your lower limb, your lower leg, into your foot, toes eventually, and it's not able to pull stuff out like toxins, debris, stuff that no longer needs to be there, swelling, inflammation. There's this hindered kind of stuckness, and it's happening at the knee. And so instead of having vessels that are open like this, they're like pinched or occluded or not so comfortable. And what you feel is pressure problems. You'll feel pressure, aching, throbbing. Any of those type of symptoms are really common for fluid stuff. So you may feel like you had poor circulation in your feet. You just can't get your feet warm. Maybe they're different colors, like they're more of like a cold color, like a blue or a purple or like a yellowy kind of color. You may have also a challenge because the nerve is right there, and actually like the nerve, depending on like where your scarring is, can be impeded to different sections of your leg. So you want to check in, like, do you have any toe stuff going on, any arch stuff, Achilles like heel things, shin splints, pain on the outside of your leg, pain on the inside of your leg. All of that can be traced up to the scar that's going on your knee. Another thing I want to talk about is something I often talk about, which is pressure versus joint centration. So I have so many times in these videos spoken about pressure problems. Pressure problems mostly happen on the torso, particularly from like the bottom of the rib cage to your pelvic floor to your tailbone. However, when we're talking about joints, when you have a scar along your joint line, which you definitely do when you are having a scar on your knee, you have a joint centration problem, meaning the joint is no longer centered because of the intense pull that is happening because of the scarring. Because the scarring will start to, as it always does, look for an anchor onto bone. Okay, so when the scar is healing, it needs to look for a stable anchor point so that it doesn't reopen, and the knee moves a lot. Not only does the knee move a lot, but it moves all the time. It should be moving with every single footstep. It should be moving every single time you exercise, go upstairs, all of these things. So it has a lot of scar tissue. And when there's a little bit of scar tissue in that tiny little area, it creates problems. It will pull the joint. So if I was just doing this and have a centered joint, it's going to pull it off its center. Okay, just as one example, this is a very severe example. This does not happen in your actual knee. It's not pulled off this much, but just so you can see. So it'll be like, it will be off of its center, and then you're having to bend and like move from that. It really sucks. Sometimes it's really painful, especially if you're post rehab and they're trying to get a lot of knee flexion, for example. There's a lot of like cranking around. I fix my like weird flip I have here. There we go. There's a lot of cranking around of knee joints to get the proper knee flexion, knee extension. Once you get those check marks from the physical therapist, you're usually like, what is that called? I can't think of it off the top of my head. You're usually like signed off on and you're good to go. However, that's like just the beginning of knee rehab. You need to actually integrate your knee with the joints above and below, with your foot, ankle, joints, and your hip. So knee centration is huge. If you don't have a centered knee over time, you're going to break down all of the cartilage in the area. You're going to break down all of the like meniscus like tissue. All of that connective tissue is not like moving in its ideal way. It's getting like grinded upon slowly, which can lead to stuff like full knee replacements later on. You really want to think about that. Getting the scars fully worked on there. It's like a total game changer. There's been so many circumstances where I've seen people like after their physical therapy knee surgery, like after post surgery, whether they get a knee replacement or whatever, ACL, and they can't get their full knee flexion or they can't get their full knee extension. It's excruciating to go through with the physio. Some people come and see me and they're like in tears because it was so painful. And all we would start working on is getting the scar to not be so stuck, getting proper mechanics into the knee joint, paying attention to what's above and below, and then everything starts to resolve. Like everything. The knee flexion, the knee extension is like a piece of cake after that, because you put the body in the correct place and it's going to do it. It's just that we don't know where the right place is if we don't have the skills. Now, what we're talking about is sorry, someone was just like talking to me in my video or in my window there. So yeah, knee rehab is so painful. This is really common, and it doesn't need to be painful. You just got to put the stuff in the right place so that you can go for it, and it becomes really easy. We just don't have the knowledge at this point on how to make that happen, which is a little unfortunate. And then the other thing I want to talk about physically is just the challenge that can happen with movement. So if you have poor movement there, like I'm talking about more the overuse situation, when maybe you banged your knee skiing. Maybe you tripped and fell. Maybe you got in some sort of traumatic like accident. Maybe in sport, it got damaged, but you didn't break anything, or you didn't like damaging a ligament. Over time, if it's not moving well, there'll be a knock-on effect of challenge and overuse and grinding and breaking down and degeneration that happens. Kind of like in the exact same way the scar tissue example I just gave would do. So we want to think about that. We want to think about always integrating these like smaller accidents or these smaller accidents into like creating a full, cohesive, integrated movement of our lower body. It has to be done at some point. If you've been waiting for a few decades, it's okay. You can still make great leaps and adjustments to how you move and have a positive upswing on like a good positive knock-on effect of that. That is I want you to keep that as an idea, because it is not the truth that if you've been dealing with something for decades and decades that you're screwed and now you're going to end up with a knee replacement. So not the truth. I've seen it many a time. I've worked on people who've had all types of different like movement challenges with ACL reconstructions, and you just get that knee in the right spot and you start breaking it down in the right spot, and you're a whole different person, and it's a total game changer. So please just keep that in mind. Knees are hard if you don't have the right information. Knees are really easy if you do. All right, so that's all I want to say for the physical considerations. I feel like that is enough. That's enough excitement about that. Okay, so let's get into the emotional and the energetic considerations. These are a little bit more subtle, but I want you to take your knee scars, your story, your situation, what happened to you, and filter like what I'm saying through that lens, because this will give you a much more clear experience around how to start working with this. And I'm going to give you a 3-part roadmap at in the third section here coming up next. So the first thing that is really common about knees is people will always reference knees as your energetic or emotional capacity to be flexible. Okay? So are you a person who can be very stubborn, or maybe like closed-minded, or have trouble taking on the opinions of others? I feel like when you get into your plan, your game plan, you just like charge through. I've done that a lot. You just feel like you got your game and you just like hit it full tilt, and you don't really take in reflection, or you don't take in opinions of others. You just feel like you got a little bit of like the blinders on and you just go for it. Are you flexible in how you think about yourself? Or do you just have a rigid kind of mentality? This is something you want to think about with knee stuff. All right, very common. Then the other thing that is so important with knee things, knee pain, knee stuff is a game changer. Like it will really get you down because you're not moving well. There's a lot of stuff that you will not be able to do. Some things just as simple as like going up and down the stairs. But it's also expanded out as like, I can't work out with my friends, or I can't take up playing tennis, or I can't do all the things that I had wanted to, or I can't even just stand and make myself a cup of tea. All of these things like really get us down, and it's really hard to come out of that. So one of the emotional considerations you definitely need to look into and think about is your confidence level, your inner trust of yourself. When we have issues going on in our body, regardless, and we don't know the cause, that is hard, because we cannot really trust our body if we don't know how it started and we don't know how to get ourselves out of the problem. So inner trust, feeling that you're capable, feeling that capacity like coming from in is something that needs to be worked out and worked through. Now, if we dip into more of like the Eastern tradition philosophy, let's just go into the world of Chinese medicine and meridians. These are energetic meridians that if you've ever received acupuncture, sometimes they will put the needles into certain points. I am definitely not a Chinese medicine doctor or practitioner. I just self-study. I want you to use this, what I am about to say, and look and research your own body because it will help you on your own trajectory of just curiosity and figuring stuff out on your own. If you can figure stuff out on your own, it feels 1,000 more times better. It feels a lot more confidence boosting, and it feels like it starts to build momentum that you can start to change and transform yourself. So the ones I want us to think about in relation to the knee, remember I was saying there's like the four sides of the pillar, the four sides of the house. There's different meridians that run through different sections of the knee. So if you have scarring on that area, or if you have challenge on that side of the house or of the pillar, you want to maybe look at these meridians. So let's start at the back. The back of the knee is the bladder meridian. So if you have not just challenge in the back of the knee, but anywhere in the back of the body, you got Achilles stuff, you got glute stuff, hamstring stuff, low back, chronic tension in the neck, headaches, all of this is back of the body stuff. I can't get into exactly why right now because this video will be very long, but it's connected to the bladder meridian, okay? So if you're interested, Google the bladder meridian and you can see how long. It's the longest, has the most points of any meridian channel in the body. Okay, then let's go, which way do you want to swing? Let's swing towards the inside. Let's go into the inner leg, so the groin, the kidney channel. The kidney channel is exactly kind of, or like we can connect to it at the groin, like really on the inside groin, all the way down the inside of the leg, past the inside of the knee. Inside of the knee is really common for people to be uncomfortable and hurt in because there's usually that medial meniscus that gets damaged or that MCL that gets damaged. So the kidney goes all the way the inside of the leg to kind of like the inside ankle bone, and then it kind of goes underneath the foot in that like inside arch spot. Think about that. All right, then we get the spleen and the pancreas, which is just like knocking over like a little edge. So it's not quite in the center of the leg. The center of the leg is like more the stomach, which we'll get to in a second. But somewhere between like the center thigh and the inner kind of groin area is the spleen pancreas. Okay, so that channel runs in that direction down towards the big toe. So do you have scarring there? It's pretty common that people have a port scar, like right through that area. Same with the stomach. Stomach, very common for people to have a port scar right there. So usually it's running-ish, like right through the center of the thigh, down the center of the leg. It's like kind of medial, kind of towards the inside. So think about that. Think about these organs. So if I'm saying stomach and you got stomach stuff and you got a scar there and you got other things like shin splints, big toe stuff, quad problems, tight hip flexors, all of these things can be starting to align and connect the dots. All the way around, if we go into the outside, so the lateral part of the leg, the outside part of the house or the pillar is your gallbladder. Gallbladder channel is a huge channel. It runs basically like the whole side of the body. It actually is kind of doing this dance along the side of the head, very closely connected to tension-based emotion like irritation and frustration and resentment, and that like holding hot, like that, that irritated, frustrated feeling, that holding of tension can come out like headache stuff. It can come out like breathing, rib stuff, side of the hip, IT band. Everyone's rolling out their IT bands. You know, the IT band is that's not the best way to think about how to heal and work with that area. All the way down the outside of the leg to the fifth toe, little toe, pinky toe, however you want to call that. So those are the meridians that you can think about and related to your house, related to the muscles that you feel, and all of that idea that if one side of your house is not working well, they'll all kind of be challenged because you need all four house walls or all four pillar walls to really keep the thing up, right? And then there's also, just before we get too wound up and complicated, there's also if like one side, like if your right side's not doing well, your left side is going to be having to pick up the slack a little bit. So if your whole right knee, aka your whole right leg, is not doing so hot, there has to be some compensation going on for that, and the other leg will kind of pick that up in a general way. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but let's just leave it at that for now. And then in Ayurveda and yoga, let's talk about the front channel, the back channel, and the earth nadi. So the earth nadi is a channel that runs at the back of the body. It's what helps us to feel grounded, and not just grounded in like its simplest form, not just like that heavy, kind of solid, reliable quality that is the earth element, but also how we like interface with the earth, like with the ground. Can we, work with that energy so that we feel that quality within us? Or are we very separate? Meaning like, I'm a human being with all my struggle in my like tight little bubble, and that's nature that I'm looking at, and it's totally different and separate from me. If you are a gardener, you know that you can start to like feel this deep connection with nature. This is one of the reasons why women are gardeners and we're great at it because at one point you can start to turn that energy like inward into yourself and feel that connection with nature, where you really feel like you're one with it, and you get it because you're a woman who is cyclical. Nature is cyclical, and it starts to build this really beautiful dynamic and truth that we are not separate. But it can feel like that, especially when you're struggling with your own wellness. So that is something important to consider. Like, do you feel kind of isolated and alone and separate? Everyone does when they're dealing with something that they can't figure out. Nobody can give them answers. So think about that for yourself. And then just really simple, there's a front channel and a back channel. There's a way that we can circulate and move energy within our body. Front channel, back channel, really easy. If there's something going on in the front channel, for example, like scarring in the front of the knee, it will impede that natural flow of energy that's moving through the body. So that's something we want to think about. We don't want to have like highways in our body. They're all bunchy and gnarly and knotted. We want to have this free flowing ability to move and circulate, which helps us to feel healthier, more revitalized and alive and enlivened. All right, that is what I want to just share in those first two sections. Now let's just get into the what to do. So I'll go into this 3-part practice, and then I'm going to share with you how to get the right mechanics in your knee. Very exciting. Okay, 3-part practice. You have to do this, and you can't skip over it. Pretty much that's the name of the game. I don't want you to skip through this section because I want you to keep in mind that you may not know how impactful your scar is, and you may not recognize that there's those physical qualities stuck in there as well as the energy and the emotion. So if you don't recognize that and you don't have that felt sense, you don't have that visceral experience of like, oh yeah, Kendra, she got a lot of that right. I can feel that. If you don't have that experience, then you can kind of force your way through something, which is what we're like kind of programmed in our mind and conditioning to do now, is like go for stuff as fast as we can in this like bigger, stronger, sexier, whatever, more kind of way. And that gets us into trouble because we lose that connection and like that kind of relationship with ourself. So we don't want to go through and skip this part out. So the 3-part practice is really simple. It should take like, I don't know, it's really no random, it's a random amount of time, 5 to 20 minutes. Don't plan a Zoom call right before you do this. Don't plan to go pick up your kids or like blast off somewhere right after you do this. Give yourself time. You want to enter a respectful relationship with your body that is of honoring yourself, what's happened to your body, and you don't want to treat yourself like a science experiment. That's like what we don't like. Who likes going to the doctors when you get poked and prodded and you don't really feel like a human being? Why would you do that to yourself? That doesn't make any sense. Give yourself the space. Give yourself the respect that you deserve to do the practice correctly. So the 3 parts are phase 1, relaxing into. There's 4 parts here. Find somewhere comfortable in your house. Sit or lay down. This second part is kind of dependent on this 3rd part, which is you have to make skin to skin contact, aka you gotta touch your scar with your hand. So if you can't touch your knee laying down, you gotta sit, okay? So make sure you've done all these things. And the touch part is really important. You wanna touch your body, like I was saying, in a way that is much more meaningful than just, slapping on lotion and putting on clothes and putting on some makeup. in a really like unconscious, not awake kind of way. I want you to say something along the lines of in your mind or out loud that like, I'm going to start working into an area that I know has some emotion. Maybe I don't, but and I'm ready to like go for that now. I'm ready to open that door a little bit. I don't have to walk through it if I don't want to, but I want to acknowledge that this area is a place of struggle, place of hurt, place of emotion, and I want to work on that. I want to start changing. I want to make the change. So that needs to happen with this sense of touch. Touch is important. We don't really use it at all. It's super important in my system. So you want to activate the sense of touch. You want to close and turn off the sense of sight. Close your eyes. Ramp up touch, tone down sight. Helps you to feel more comfortable, internal, maybe get more information. It's just nice. Okay, physical consideration is you want to gather as much physical stuff as you can feel. Numbness, hypersensitivity, hot, cold, feeling nauseous, feeling any other kind of thing, lightheaded, very common, feel like an aversion, feel icky, feel like, ooh, this makes me feel uncomfortable. Bring that out. You want to know about that because that's probably why, or one of the reasons why you're avoiding it, because who wants to feel like that? But the only way to go through these things is to literally go through them. You have to recognize that they're there so you can actually transform them. When you're in the dark, you're in the dark. You don't know what's around you. You don't know what you need to work on. You're confused. So that, as well as grabbing the physical qualities of how it feels. Ropiness. Does it feel like there's tension places, like the scar is stuck? It's very common the scars in the knees will be stuck. Or you'll feel like little like puffs of swelling. Like you'll feel like there's a lot of inflammation or like low-grade swelling still in the area. Also very common. Feel like where the skin is pulled out, where it's stuck in, all of that, feel it. Where is that like anchoring onto the bone? What direction is it traveling in? Figure all that out. Then the third part that I want you to think about is the emotion and the energy that I just spoke about. That, are you mentally flexible? Are you emotionally flexible? Or are you kind of hard grooved? Are you feeling confident or capable of your own capacity? All of the things we spoke about with the meridians, where they are, all the nadis in the channels. And then the three-part practice that I give, or the three-part roadmap that I want to give you for this is think about your own life and situation in these three parts: the before, the during, and the after. So when you think about the before, think about your emotional state. What were you saying to yourself, your inner dialogue? What was going on in your mind before the surgery or the accident? All right. It's really important to pick all that up. Pick as much of it up as you can. Then you want to do the during, the accident, the surgery, always fear, always like relationship dynamics that may have held resentment or bitterness or something like that. Check on that. And then the after. The after for knees are huge. Knees, when they hurt, when they're not moving well, it sucks. And it really puts a toll on people because you lose so much functionality. So you want to, again, grab the mood, grab the dialogue that's going on in your head. How do you feel? How does it like impede and like strain your finances, your relationship dynamics, how you feel about yourself? All of that stuff needs to go in a very deep way. Try to go like below just the superficial layer. So that's the third part. That's your three-part practice. Okay, I'm going to explain in words the best I can to do proper knee mechanics. At first, you're going to think it's probably really easy, and you're like, Kendra, I don't know what the big deal is here, but it is so healthy to give your leg this chance, and I'm going to give it to you in the simplest form. There's progressional ways to do this. I was just working with someone yesterday, and I gave this exact same exercise, and I don't charge pennies for my one-to-one sessions. So just getting this here and alive where you're getting it for free is really awesome. And I'm really happy to share it with you because it's really important that we get the knee mechanics right, because like a lot of people are getting it wrong and it's putting us at a disadvantage. So I want to clear the air, and you clear the air more if you go Google anatomy and motion. Okay. So you're going to sit on your bum and lean back into your hands. Okay. So sit on your bum on the ground. Lean back into your hands, and you can do it on both legs, but obviously so you have one knee you're interested more than the other, but it's helpful to look at both because you have a good leg and a bad leg. I don't like that terminology, but just for simplicity's sake, I think you know what I mean. So what you should be doing is you should feel like as your knee bends, your tibia, your shin bone, moves outwards. It moves lateral, it externally rotates. All the same words or all the same thing, different words. So what you're going to do is so I'm going to just describe this with my right knee. Okay, so I'm going to pretend I got a real bad something or other going on with my right knee and I have scarring. I'm giving you a movement practice first because sometimes working on the scar manually at first is a little too much. So let's start to get the good movement pattern in and then work from there over time. Okay, so I'm sitting on my butt, I'm leaning my hands back. You're going to put 2 feet on the ground. And what you're going to do is you're going to start to drag that right heel. Drag your right heel, push it like down into the ground and drag your right heel towards your bum. Maintain that like kind of downward and back direction of force as you move your heel towards your bum. So you're bending your knee more. As you do that, your toes should start to go. Instead of 12 o'clock facing right up towards the sky, they should start to go to like 2 o'clock, okay? 3 o'clock would be straight right. It's a bit extreme. So it's going like 1, 2 o'clock. You keep that pressure and you look and see like, oh yeah, my tibia is going external. Awesome, this is great. And then you're gonna let go of that pressure, that like kind of downward and back force, and you're just gonna slowly straighten the leg. The heel can just glide along the ground. Straighten the leg and straighten the knee completely. Okay? That will, because you were externally rotated, as you straighten your knee will go back to internal. Okay? That's what you're going to do on that leg 5 or so times. And if you're like, Kendra, I feel like this is really easy, like I already got this, go and check and compare it to your other leg. Check your other knee to see like how different it is, because you actually may find that it's a lot more different than you thought. And the other like just small word of caution, if you're like, Kendra, this is so easy, what's the big deal here? What I want you to think about is the fact that your knee doesn't need to rotate like crazy. We're not talking about gumbo where your like leg rotates in this wild way. But if your knee mechanics are backwards, which is the traditional, unfortunately, way that we get taught or the way that people treat, it's going to really mess up your knee. It's going to put so much strain and tension in all the wrong spots. So just learning this mechanic again to get the knee going in the right direction, getting the proper slide and glide through the joint is so healing. So just do that a few times. Do that once a day, but do it for a few weeks and start to notice the difference. There's progressions on how to do this like standing in gravity, but this is a really good first step. It really helps you like assess and think about your body in a different way and just start to compare from this to that. Compare the left leg to the right leg. From today, compare in a month's time. And this is joint mechanics, so you don't want to muscle and force yourself around. So you may feel like you're having to kind of force it at first, but if you keep doing this for 2, 3, 4 weeks, it will be a natural slide and glide movement of the knee that is a lot less muscular. If you're having to muscle and force yourself around for those 4 weeks, then you know that you had a really big problem with your knee, and your knee's probably thanking you that you're taking this up. So that is what I have to say today. I know that was probably really long and exertive, but I wanted to get all that out because knees are a big deal. I want you to think about all the surgeries. And if you have any questions about any of this, please just let me know. Write a message inside this video, and I'm very happy to get back to you. If you try it out and you want more information, send me a message, write it in the chat. Everyone benefits from you typing stuff out because everyone sees your question and everyone gets the answer. All right, thank you for being with me today on this lovely Sunday. I will see you probably at least 3 times next week because we got a lot of videos to get through before we change gears. We are changing our theme in probably like midway through October, and I also have another really exciting surprise that I'm going to share on the 1st of October. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.